People love to say that respect has to be earned. I believe that for almost 10 years. When I married Amanda, I knew I wasn't just marrying a woman. I was stepping into a life already in motion, a house already filled with memories that didn't belong to me. Her two boys, Owen and Caleb, still talked about their biological father as if he were some distant legend. He drifted in and out whenever it suited him, leaving promises behind like empty beer cans after a weekend party.
I never tried to replace him. That was never my goal. I only wanted to become someone they could count on. So I showed up every single day. When the mortgage payment was due, it came from my account. When Amanda's SUV needed replacing, I signed the papers. When Owen started talking about college, I opened another savings account without saying a word. Caleb wanted to play travel baseball. I paid the registration fees, the uniforms, the hotels, the gas, and the equipment. Insurance, medical bills, phones, streaming subscriptions, Christmas presents, family vacations, emergency repairs. Every problem seemed to end with my credit card sliding across another counter. I never complained, not once. People assumed Amanda and I shared everything equally, but they never saw the spreadsheets on my computer or the automatic withdrawals that disappeared from my checking account every month. They never noticed that I postponed buying things for myself because someone else always needed something first. I told myself that was what husbands did, that was what fathers did, even if the word step always came before it. I wasn't chasing gratitude. Gratitude fades. I wasn't asking for Father's Day speeches or framed photos with sentimental captions. I wanted something much smaller. Basic respect. The kind where nobody rolls their eyes when you speak. The kind where your opinion matters because you've earned the right to have one. Instead, every holiday reminded me exactly where I stood. Thanksgiving dinners always included stories about Amanda's ex. Christmas mornings featured gifts that real dad had mailed at the last minute, while the presents I had spent weeks shopping for became background decoration. Family reunions were even worse. Relatives introduced me with careful wording. This is Amanda's husband. Never. This is the boy's dad. I learned to smile through it. I learned to carve the turkey. I learned to wash the dishes after everyone else had gone home. I convinced myself that time would fix what effort couldn't. 10 years should be enough, I thought. 10 years of paying bills, 10 years of showing up, 10 years of choosing them every single morning. Surely that counted for something. I couldn't have been more wrong. The illusion died on a Saturday afternoon at Amanda's father's retirement party. Nearly 100 people filled the community hall. Family, neighbors, old coworkers, friends who had known Amanda since she was a little girl. Music played in the background, while children ran between tables and adults laughed over plastic cups of iced tea. It looked like every ordinary family celebration, until someone asked a harmless question. Amanda's uncle raised his glass and smiled at Owen. "So," he said, "your mom and Brandon must be pretty strict with you boys." A few people laughed. Someone looked at me. Before I could even smile, Owen leaned back in his chair with the confidence only a 20-year-old can possess. He laughed, a loud, effortless laugh. Then he pointed directly at me. "We obey our real dad," he said. He smirked before finishing the sentence. "Not this imposter." The room became quieter. My chest tightened. Owen wasn't finished. "You don't get a vote." Caleb burst out laughing. "Yeah," he added. "Mom knows better than to let him decide anything." Someone at another table actually chuckled. Then I noticed the phones. People were recording, not one, several. They wanted to capture the moment, capture my humiliation. I looked across the room at Amanda. She was standing less than 10 feet away. She heard every word. She saw every face. She saw me. She never said a single thing. Not one word. No, that's enough. No, show some respect. No, he's your stepfather. Nothing. Only silence. In that moment, I realized something that nearly a decade of marriage had hidden from me. I hadn't been standing inside the family. I'd only been financing it. I looked at Owen, then Caleb, then Amanda. I nodded once. Fair enough. Those were the only words I spoke. I turned around, walked out of the retirement party, and everyone there assumed I had accepted the humiliation. They had no idea I had just accepted the truth instead. The drive home was quiet enough to hear my own pulse. I kept both hands on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield while the late afternoon sun turned the road gold and cruel. Behind me, somewhere in that community hall, Amanda's family was probably still laughing. Maybe they were replaying the video already. Maybe Owen was enjoying the attention. Maybe Caleb was leaning into it, proud to have helped draw blood. I wondered if Amanda had finally said something after I left. Then I knew she hadn't. That was the truth that settled deepest. Not Owen's words, not Caleb's laughter, not the phones lifted like witnesses at an execution. Her silence. That silence followed me into the house. It walked beside me down the hallway. It stood behind me when I entered my office and closed the door. I didn't slam it, there was no need. Rage is loud when it still wants to be heard. Mine had passed that point. Mine had become something cleaner, colder. I sat at my desk, turned on the lamp, and looked around at the room where I'd kept that family alive. The filing cabinet held insurance papers. The drawer beside my knee held vehicle titles. My laptop remembered every password better than the people I had protected remembered my name. Imposter. You don't get a vote. Fair enough. I opened the first account. Owen's debit card was linked to mine. I had set it up when he left for college because Amanda worried he might run short on food, gas, or books. He had used it for restaurants, clothes, concert tickets, and whatever else young men buy when they believe money appears because life loves them. I clicked freeze. One button. Years of generosity stopped breathing. Then Caleb. His card went next. I removed both boys from the vehicle insurance policy. Not canceled. Removed. There was a difference. I was not reckless. I was precise. The SUV was mine. Bought with my money. Registered under my name. Maintained by my hands. I disabled their access to the app, changed the garage code, and removed Owen's spare key from the hook, where it had hung for 2 years like a symbol of trust he had never earned. Then tuition. That one made me pause. Not because I doubted myself, because I remembered the day Owen got accepted. Amanda cried in the kitchen, holding the email against her chest like it was a holy document. Owen had grinned and said his real dad would be proud. I stood there beside the refrigerator, smiling like a fool, already calculating what I would have to sacrifice to make it happen. I had paid the deposits, the housing, the books, the emergency laptop, the meal plan, the parking permit. I canceled every automatic payment connected to my name. I moved to Caleb's accounts next. School fees, club dues, phone plan, streaming services, cloud storage, gaming subscription, music app, food delivery account, shared shopping login. Gone, 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 gone. Each click sounded small. Each one cut a rope. By the time I finished, the office felt different, lighter, as if the walls had exhaled after holding their breath for 10 years. My phone kept lighting up. Amanda, Amanda, Amanda. I didn't answer. Then the family group chat opened on my screen. Someone had already posted a shaky clip from the party. I saw myself standing there while Owen laughed, Caleb joined in, and Amanda stood silent in the background. There it was. Proof. Not of what they said, of what she allowed. I typed one sentence. From this moment forward, the man without a vote no longer pays the bills. I sent it. Then I placed the phone face down on the desk and leaned back in my chair. For the first time that day, I breathed. Less than an hour later, the front door flew open. Amanda came in like a storm wearing heels, her face flushed, her purse still hanging from one shoulder. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't apologize. She didn't mention the video. She demanded, "What did you do?" I turned slowly in my chair. She stood in the doorway of my office, trembling with anger, as if I had embarrassed her, as if I had been the one who turned a family celebration into a public sacrifice. "What did I do?" I asked. Her voice rose. "The boys are calling me. Their cards aren't working. Owen says he got locked out of the SUV app. Caleb can't access half his accounts. Brandon, what the hell is wrong with you?" I studied her face. This woman I had loved. This woman I had carried through panic attacks, repairs, debts, hospital visits, birthdays, funerals, bad jobs, bad news, and long nights when she swore she didn't know how she would survive without me. Now she looked at me like I was the danger. I said, "I listened." She blinked. "What?" "I listened to your sons." They were joking. No. They were careless. No. They're young. Owen is 20, Caleb is 17. Her jaw tightened. "You're destroying this family over a few stupid words." That almost made me laugh. Almost. But nothing in me was alive enough for humor. "A few stupid words?" I repeated. She stepped closer. Yes, they were showing off. People were watching. You know how boys are. I know how men are, I said. And I know how wives are supposed to be. That struck her. Good. Her eyes sharpened. Don't put this on me. It belongs on you. She flinched as if I had raised my hand, but my voice never rose. You stood there, Amanda, in front of your father, your relatives, your neighbors, your coworkers. Your sons called me an imposter. They said I didn't get a vote. People recorded it, and you said nothing. Her mouth opened, closed. There it was again, silence. I nodded once. Exactly. She whispered, I didn't want to make a scene. They made one. You just chose your side in it. Her eyes filled then, but I had learned that tears often arrive after accountability, not before. I had seen Amanda cry over bills, over stress, over her son's disappointments. I had rarely seen her cry over my pain. She said, You can't just cut them off. I can. They depend on you. No, they depend on my money. That's not fair. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the floor, and for once, Amanda took a step back. Not because I frightened her, because she felt the difference. The old Brandon would have softened by now. The old Brandon would have apologized for being hurt. The old Brandon would have opened the accounts again just to restore peace. That man had died at her father's retirement party. I looked at her and said, Neither I nor the boys changed the rules today. They simply made them public. She shook her head. What does that even mean? It means if I'm not family in front of everyone, I'm not responsible in private. Brandon. No. The word came out flat. Final. She stared at me as if she had never heard it from my mouth before. Maybe she hadn't. I walked past her into the hallway. On the wall hung a framed family photo from 3 summers ago. Amanda in the middle, Owen and Caleb on either side. Me at the edge, one hand on Amanda's shoulder, smiling like a man grateful to be included in his own life. I took it down. Amanda watched me. What are you doing? I opened the closet, set the frame inside, and closed the door. Making the house honest, I said. Behind us, my phone began to ring again. Owen, then Caleb, then Amanda's mother, then someone else from the party. I didn't answer any of them. The man without a vote had finally stopped explaining himself. Amanda spent the next 2 days trying to convince herself this was temporary. I could see it every time she walked through the house with her phone pressed against her ear, whispering into it as though lowering her voice could somehow lower reality. She called the bank first, then the insurance company, then the university, then her father, then her sister. Every conversation ended the same way. Nothing had been hacked, nothing had malfunctioned, nothing had been canceled by mistake. Everything had been removed by the account owner, me. She came into the kitchen late Monday afternoon while I was drinking coffee. Brandon, she said carefully, the university confirmed the tuition payment isn't coming. I looked up from my mug. I know. They'll put Owen's enrollment on hold. I know. Her shoulders tightened. You really aren't going to fix this? I shook my head. There isn't anything to fix. She stared at me in disbelief. You're acting like this doesn't affect you. It doesn't. That answer hit her harder than I expected. For years, she had watched me lose sleep over every problem in that house. If one of the boys got sick, I rearranged my work schedule. If a bill arrived higher than expected, I found a way to cover it. If Amanda worried about money, I reassured her before she even asked. Now I sat calmly drinking coffee. She didn't recognize the man sitting across from her. Neither did I. An hour later, Owen burst through the front door. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if we could talk. He stormed into the kitchen with his phone in one hand and a stack of printed papers in the other. What the hell is wrong with you? I didn't answer immediately. He threw the papers onto the table. They're freezing my classes unless this gets paid. I glanced at the notice. Then I pushed it back toward him. That belongs to you. His face reddened. No, it belongs to you. I met his eyes. No, Owen, it never did. He laughed bitterly. You've been paying it from the beginning. I chose to. So pay it. I don't choose to anymore. For the first time since the retirement party, uncertainty crossed his face. You can't just stop. I already did. He looked toward Amanda. Mom, say something. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The irony almost escaped me. At the retirement party, she had been silent for me. Now she was silent for him. Caleb arrived 15 minutes later. Unlike his brother, he wasn't angry. He looked confused. My debit card declined at the gas station. I know. They said I'm not on the insurance anymore. You're not. They towed the SUV from campus because I couldn't prove coverage. I know. His shoulders dropped. You really did all this. I did. He looked at Amanda as though expecting her to tell him everything would go back to normal. Instead, she simply stood there with tears gathering in her eyes. The house had never felt so quiet. Then the phone started ringing again. Owen's biological father. He answered on speaker. Dad, Owen said quickly, I need help with tuition. There was a long pause. How much? Owen told him. Another pause. I don't have that kind of money. What do you mean? I mean exactly that. But Brandon stopped paying. I heard. So what am I supposed to do? I can't help you. The line went dead. Nobody moved. For years they had treated him like the real father and me like the substitute. Now the difference between biology and responsibility was sitting in the middle of the kitchen. Heavy. Impossible to ignore. Caleb slowly lowered himself into a chair. I thought... He never finished the sentence. You thought he'd step in, I said quietly. He nodded. I was wrong. Neither Amanda nor Owen spoke. There was nothing left to argue. The numbers were doing all the talking now. 3 days later, another notice arrived. Then another. Late fees, housing deadlines, insurance notifications, subscription cancellations. One by one, the comfortable life I had quietly financed disappeared. Streaming services stopped working. The grocery account declined. The shared phone plan expired. Even the toll pass attached to my vehicle account stopped opening the gates. Small inconveniences became daily reminders. Every missing payment carried my name without my presence. Amanda tried juggling the expenses herself. She couldn't. Her paycheck covered the mortgage only because I had already paid 3 months in advance before the retirement party. Everything else piled up around her faster than she could organize it. One evening, she sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by bills. She wasn't crying, she was calculating. For the first time in years, she was seeing the household the way I always had. Not as birthdays and holidays, as numbers. Relentless numbers. The next morning, I packed 2 suitcases. Amanda watched from the bedroom doorway. You're leaving. I'm moving. For how long? I don't know. She stepped closer. We can fix this. I zipped the suitcase. No. The boys are starting to understand. They're starting to understand the bills. That's not fair. I picked up the suitcase. Fair ended the moment you watched them erase me in front of everyone. She reached for my arm. I gently moved away. I loved this family, Amanda. I know. No. I looked directly into her eyes. You loved what I provided. The words stayed between us long after I walked past her. That afternoon, I signed the lease on a small townhouse 15 minutes away. It wasn't large. It wasn't luxurious. But when I unlocked the front door that first evening, something happened that I hadn't experienced in almost a decade. Silence. Not the painful silence of being ignored. The peaceful silence of finally belonging to myself. I stood in the empty living room and realized I had mistaken sacrifice for love for far too long. The bills were finally going where they belonged. So was I. Peace did not arrive like joy. It arrived like exhaustion, finally setting down its weapons. The townhouse had white walls, cheap blinds, and a kitchen so small I could touch both counters if I stretched my arms wide enough. There were no family portraits, no backpacks dumped by the door, no voices shouting from upstairs, no television left running in an empty room, because no one in that house had ever paid the electric bill and felt it in their bones. At first, the silence frightened me. Then, it healed me. I bought one chair before I bought a sofa, one plate before I bought a set, one coffee mug, black and plain, because I no longer had to consider anyone else's preferences before choosing something for myself. It sounds pathetic, maybe, a grown man learning how to own a mug, but that was the measure of what I had become. For nearly 10 years, every decision had passed through the filter of Amanda, Owen, Caleb, tuition, insurance, cars, holidays, birthdays, emergencies, groceries, pride, guilt, and fear. Now I woke up in a quiet room and owed no one an apology for breathing. The first message from Caleb came on Thursday. I stared at his name for a long time before opening it. He wrote, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed. I just followed Owen. I didn't think." I read it twice. Then I placed the phone face down. Not because I hated him, because I believed him. That was the cruelest part. Caleb probably hadn't thought. He had seen his brother draw blood and joined in because contempt is contagious when nobody in the room stops it. He had laughed because laughter was easier than loyalty. He had followed because boys like him often mistake cowardice for belonging. But my life had not been ruined by people who didn't think. It had been ruined by people who never had to. Owen's apology came the next day. No text. A voicemail. His voice was lower than usual, stripped of arrogance, rough around the edges. "Brandon, I was out of line. I know that now. Dad won't help. He said he has his own bills and that I'm an adult. I didn't realize how much you were doing. I don't know what I thought." There was a long silence. Then he said, "I'm sorry." That was all. I sat alone in my townhouse, listening to the message with the evening light bleeding across the floor, and I felt nothing clean enough to call satisfaction. I had wanted them to understand. Now they did, and it did not bring back anything. Understanding is not resurrection. It cannot raise the years you buried. It cannot return the nights you spent lying beside a woman who let her sons chip away at you one joke at a time. It cannot unrecord the video. It cannot unsay imposter. It cannot put a vote back into the hands of a man who only mattered when something was due. Amanda came on Sunday. She knocked softly, which was unlike her. At the house, she used to walk into any room I occupied, as if my privacy were another shared utility under my name. But at the townhouse, she knocked. I opened the door. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup, hair tied back, eyes swollen from too many nights spent discovering that regret does not pay bills either. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, taking in the bare living room, the single chair, the unopened boxes, the quiet that belonged only to me. "This is how you want to live?" she whispered. I closed the door. "This is how I can breathe." She turned toward me and something broke across her face. "I made a mistake." I said nothing. She swallowed hard. "I should have defended you." "Yes." I froze. "No." Her eyes lifted. "You chose." The word landed between us with more weight than shouting ever could. She pressed a hand against her mouth, but I kept going. "You chose comfort. You chose avoiding a scene. You chose letting your sons humiliate me so the party could continue. You chose their pride over my dignity." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's because you never thought I would stop." She closed her eyes. There it was. The truth neither of us had spoken. Amanda had mistaken my patience for permanence. She had confused endurance with consent. She had watched me absorb insult after insult because I always stayed, always paid, always returned to the table, always found a way to make life easier for everyone but myself. "I love you," she whispered. I wanted those words to matter. God help me, I did. But love that arrives after the money stops has a strange taste. It tastes like panic. "It was never about the money," I said. She nodded quickly. "I know." "No, Amanda, you don't." My voice stayed calm, but something inside me was shaking. The money was just evidence. The mortgage, the cars, the insurance, the tuition, the emergencies. All of that was proof that I was willing to carry weight for this family. But respect was supposed to be the proof that I belonged to it. She cried harder then. I did not move to comfort her. That was new. Cruel, maybe. Necessary, definitely. "The marriage ended at that party," I said. "Not when I moved out, not when I cut off the accounts. It ended when your sons erased me in public and you let them." She whispered, "Please don't say that." "I have to." "Brandon, we can rebuild." I shook my head. "No. You want to restore access. That's not the same thing." She stared at me as if I had struck her. Maybe I had. With truth. A month later, the paperwork began. Amanda asked for counseling. Owen asked to meet. Caleb sent longer messages, clumsy and sad. I answered some, ignored others. I did not rage. I did not punish. I simply refused to return to the role they had designed for me. Provider. Placeholder. Imposter with a wallet. No more. Sometimes I still think about that retirement party. I think about the phones rising, the laughter, Owen's grin, Caleb's echo, Amanda's silence. I think about the man I was before I walked out. He was tired. He was loyal. He was blind. And maybe he loved them better than they deserved. But dignity, once awakened, does not crawl back into its cage. So I chose the small townhouse. I chose the single mug.
I chose mornings without resentment sitting across from me at breakfast. I chose being alone over being used. And now I ask you plainly, was I wrong to leave? Would you have endured it? Or would you too have finally let the man without a vote stop paying the price?